Okay, here we are again for another Career Insight session. I'm joined today by my two colleagues, Dean and Trevor, who are going to talk to you about the ins and outs of starting your own business. Again, I'm sure something that a lot of you would find useful, so lots of top tips. So if you're watching live, please comment, please ask questions. If you're listening on catch up, again, we'll try and come back to you if there's anything in particular you want to know. So guys, over to you. Just quick intro for myself. I'm Alyson Ainsworth. I am a career coach, executive coach, and I'm hosting and facilitating this session. I'm going to try and facilitate this session with these two. I have made them swear on their lives that they will stick to time. So over to you to introduce yourself. Dean, do you want to go first?
I'm sure I had my fingers crossed when I agreed to that. So I'm Dean Jamson. I'm an executive and career coach, and I write workshops and facilitate workshops and do the occasional speaking gig as well. That's me. I do a lot of work with 1080. Trevor, over to you.
Right. I'm Trevor. As you can see there, it says I'm an executive coach and business mentor. I started life as an economist, then I became a journalist, and then I became director of PR business. And then I decided to set up my own business, did that for about sort of 12, 13 years, still doing it. And also now working with 1080 in terms of sort of mentoring and coaching, which is why we're all here. So that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. So let's start off with our first question, which is, what is it that you wish you'd known when you started your business? So, Dean, I'll come to you first.
Well, I think I probably could have done with one of these sessions running before I actually made the leap. So I'm hoping it's quite useful for other people. I think there's probably a couple of practical things like, business formation. Probably it would have been better to have had a bit more of an idea of setup in terms of, do I go limited company or stay, self-employed? I think things like that would have been useful. And I think if probably somebody had said to me, think about the day-to-day aspect, about, be prepared for some quiet times. You're not going to hit the ground with, at full capacity straight away. So thinking about how you fill your time when you're until the point when you're busy would have been quite useful. And I think once you start to feel busier, that's a good thing. You get a little bit of traction. And I think the final thing probably is thinking about, and this is probably not something that I wish I'd known beforehand, but it would be advice I would give to anybody, is working for yourself isn't for everyone. It's great, don't get me wrong. And I know one of the questions you're going to ask us later on is around why we do it, what we enjoy. It isn't for everyone. So I think it's about being ready to not earn at times as well. So being prepared for that. You might have a short period before you're doing work and then the money comes in. So I think it's about the mental preparation for yourself as much as some of the practical things that I know we're going to talk about a little bit later on.
Right. Thanks, Dean.
I think just picking up on what Dean was saying there, the sort of the mindset side of things actually is a crucial thing. I remember that when I set up, I had a fear of failure, if you like, as many people do when they set up their business, and I was thinking, will the work come in? Am I doing the right thing? How do I reach out to people? And then I realized after about 6 months and the sky hadn't fallen in, and my fear of failure actually turned into something which was much more like a sort of fear of success, that actually I was doing quite well. And then it became a whole different set of disciplines. I wish I'd known when I started the business that if things are going well, as they can do, how do you manage that? I made a few mistakes in regards, sort of managing my workload, saying yes to everything, doing too much of that rather than sort of taking a step back and thinking a bit more strategically. I suppose the other thing is that I'm sounding like a bit like the Spider-Man movie here, where I'm saying, but with great power comes great responsibility. You have the freedom to sort of manage yourself, but you also have a responsibility. If the printer breaks down, there's no one there to fix it. If something, in the early days, at least, if you need to send in your tax return, there's no one else there to do it. I do have someone to do that now, but there's lots of things that you don't think about when you're in an employment situation. And we'll get on, as Dean said, onto what the great things about this are, is that it's a double-edged sword, and you have to realize it's a kind of a different world. And so I think if I was talking to the me of sort of 12, 13 years ago, I would probably say just be aware of quite how different it is. And as it happens, I love it. But as Dean said, it's not for everyone.
No, it's interesting. I remember leaving a large corporate 10 years ago now, and I think if you'd said to me then I would be self-employed, I'd have said not in a million years. It's not for me. I'm a corporate bunny, but actually it was a lifestyle choice at that stage to say it needed to look very different to what it had done. 10 years later, there's lots of things I look back on, but I wish I'd just been a little bit more confident in that leap of faith to say, actually, it is going to be okay.
I think probably we've all said to ourselves a few times, I wish I'd done this sooner. And I know a few times I've said to myself, and my wife said to me, I told you should have done this a long time ago. But I think, the piecing onto that bit of advice, I think it's about doing it at a time when you do feel ready and you are prepared and you are, and it's right for you. And I think I did it at a time when it felt right for me, and everybody said to me, oh, you should have done it sooner. But actually, if it was right for me at that time, then that was the right time to do it. And I think that's probably something people should consider.
I totally relate to that, because there was a period earlier in my career where I was between journalism jobs, and I became a self-employed writer, and at that time it wasn't quite right because I was still single. I still needed the social aspect of the office, and it wasn't quite the right time, and that kind of, it made me think, maybe this isn't the right thing for me to do. But later on, it was the perfect time. So the other thing about the mind, related to that, is that I remember I said to my wife, I want to set up a business, and she said, well, why do you want to set up a business? And I said, well, I'm fed up with working for idiots. And she said, that's right, you want to be the idiot. And then I went, no, that's not quite what I meant at all. But what she was saying is, from an employment situation, she sort of could see no upside. But I think, from my point of view, it was the right time. It was the right time in the career to actually go and do that, to sort of have the responsibility, to be able to, an experience to actually be able to sort of go and make something of it.
Yeah. Leading on from that then, guys, if we think about setting up, what do you need to ask yourself before you start, apart from, is it the right time, which is clearly a great question, but the kind of the why, the who, the what elements. So Trevor, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, in terms of why, I think you do need to ask yourself the why question, which, when I say the why question, I'm kind of mean, what's the purpose of your business? What is it? What kind of business might it be? Is it going to be a lifestyle business? Is it just something that you are doing as the main breadwinner, for example? In which case there's slightly different sets of disciplines rather than just as a side hustle. What is your motivation, your purpose in doing that? I think the what, if I jump across to that for a second, is really what kind of problem you're solving for those with whom you're hoping are going to buy things off you. And things to consider is, what do people, maybe in your previous, what did people ask you about all the time? What did they say they struggled with? What did they complain about? So struggles, complaints, things that you observe that the world needs, ahead of what you necessarily have to offer in your skill. And then, so ask yourself, what does the world need? And then see how your skills match up to providing that skill. And we've all got, from our experience, the best thing, of course, is to understand what the problem you solve is, to just go and ask as many people as you can. What is it that they're really, really struggling with? That's the what. And then there's a who element, which is, with people you've worked with in the past, if you're moving from, say, an employment situation to providing some sort of similar service, for example, by yourself, who have been your favorite clients in the past or customers? What have been your big success stories that you can talk to, and who you've been helping? Who do you feel most inspired to help, which is sometimes quite different from who pays the most, for example, in terms of what you're doing. Hopefully it'll be the same thing, but it's not always. But there's also that question of inspiration versus remuneration, if you like. So there's a bit of a why, what, and who element, I think, that you probably need to ask yourself. At least have an idea of what that particular roadmap might look like.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, isn't it, Trevor? Because it's always about that niche.
Yeah.
And like you say, what is the problem you're solving? But what is my niche? I know I wanted to use my coaching, but I didn't really know what type of coaching, and it takes a bit of unpacking. Dean, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think it's back to that mental preparation. I think it's also be prepared a little bit to change, in terms of change yourself, but also you might set out with a clear intention of what it is you want to do, why you're doing it. But then you'll evolve in the same way, Alyson, you're talking about, what sort of coach do I want to be? That may evolve over a period of time. You might start working with a particular audience or a market and actually think, I really enjoy this, I want to do more of that. So I think it's about being prepared to change. When I'm working with different businesses, I often use, there's a Sir David Brailsford quote from one of his Investors in People videos he did several years ago. And one of the things he says is about, in terms of your role as a manager or a leader in an organization, is about having absolute clarity over role and responsibility, and then having role acceptance, because without role acceptance, people won't do it. And I've kind of taken that into the business and said to myself, I need to have absolute clarity over what I am going to do. And I think that's probably one of the key things for me is determining what you will do and what you won't do. And Trevor made a point about, saying yes to everything. And I think we've all done that at some point in starting a business, is you say yes to everything because you need the money coming in, you need to keep busy. But I think then that if you do that, it might inhibit your ability to say yes to the things that you actually wanted to do in the first place. So I think it's about trying to get some moderation in there. So I think it's about having that clarity over what you will do, what you won't do. And I think from that, for me, it's then aligning that to being clear on what you've agreed to do for people. So that clarity moves into that, trying to remove as much ambiguity so that you and the other person or the other people are very clear about what the objectives of the work are, and that from that you can achieve those objectives or you can exceed expectations. But I think sometimes there is too many grey areas in business. So I've really set about that clarity as a mission of mine, that whoever I'm working with, whether it's on an associate basis or directly with a client, is seeking that clarity so that I can make sure at the end of it, I've achieved everything that I set out to do. Because it is tempting to say yes to everything when you first start up. So I also liked what Trevor was saying about, look at who else is doing it. Look at what they do. We have a saying in learning development about being a magpie. You pick all the shiny bits that other people do and have them, use them for your own. And I think, look at what other people do. And I think the other bit, just and then I will promise I'll shut up, because Alyson will say throwing some random word at me like orangutan, like that's the word they shut up. So I know orangutan's coming at me in a minute, Alyson. So I think the other thing is thinking about where you can get your advice from, who your support network is. Because Trevor, again, you said about networking with people, having the level of support, and also not being ready to not be in the office environment or be part of a team. And I think what I've discovered is if you have the right people around you, you don't have to be part of a team, but you can have a team around you, and having some good mentors in place around how they can help support you. And I must admit, I feel very, very fortunate that I had some really good advice from people, and that really helped me to keep a firm hand on the tiller as to where I was going, what the direction I was going in. And I think that's been really, really useful.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love that point about seeking advice, and particularly from an expert. It's not about opinions, because you can ask lots of other people what their opinion is, but getting advice and surrounding yourselves with people who can support that. Trevor, you mentioned the accountant and that side of it. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's one of the most important things, Alyson. It's almost we were talking about niching, about finding a niche where you think when you start out that more is more. The more people you try and appeal to, the more you'll get, and actually less is more. It's the same with expertise as well. You just you accept that I might be an expert in A and B, but actually C, D, and E I don't know anything about, and I should stop pretending I do. I'll just get in people who are smarter than me to help me along, and actually we'll all end up happier and probably making more money out of it. So
yeah, no, I agree. Okay, luckily the orangutan was coming, but he didn't quite make it. Okay, so we're moving on to the practicalities in terms of the what else, the when and the how elements. So what else do we need to know when we're starting to think about setting up a business? So Dean, do you want to go first on this one?
Oh, there's so many things on there. I mean, I think for me, it comes into the practicalities and the logistics side of things. Trevor's mentioned about an accountant there. I think it's, deciding which bits you feel comfortable and competent and confident in doing. Do you want to have an accountant that's going to pick up that side of things for you? Are you feeling quite confident about it? Do you want to use an app that will do the invoicing? I think from a practicality point of view, coming back to the original question, no one told me when I was set up that when I got my first tax bill, HMRC doesn't like you being indebted to them. Can't imagine why. So you pay your first tax bill, but then you also pay an amount on account. So in the January this year, I paid last year's tax bill and an amount on account for the following year, and I've got another payment to pay in July. Didn't even occur to me when I was setting up until the accountant told me, and I was like, "Ooh, wasn't expecting that." So I think there's some practicalities around things like what's your on costs. I started and I bought a car outright because I didn't want the on cost of a finance payment until I'd got some decent experience of what my earnings were actually going to be. So I think is what are your on costs in terms of affiliations. I'm a member of the EMCC Coaching Confederation, so that's an annual payment that goes in. What's your on costs of the monthly things like Zoom or Canva if you're creating presentations, whatever it might be. So you have a firm idea of the practicalities and what the minimum requirement is each month, and putting an amount aside for that tax bill, because HMRC doesn't want to wait for it either. So I think there's practicalities like that, and knowing that financially it can be a little bit uncertain. So you're going from a position where you may have had a set wage and benefits like healthcare, company pension, phone provided for you, things like that. So I think it's trying to expand it all to take in the bigger picture of everything that you're going to need and almost overestimate it so that you're never falling foul of unexpected costs from that side of things. So I think my advice would be think about the bigger picture and not just the nice bits.
Yeah.
And I know Trevor's keen to jump in. I was just going to say but also building in some work routines.
Yeah.
So you may have come from a background where there are set reports and things that need to be done at set times, and that might be one of the reasons why you've wanted to escape that corporate world or that business. But actually what that does give you is some structure and routine. So I think it's about thinking about what's your structure and routine at the times where you are quieter, so you feel busy, and by feeling busy, mindset kicks in to have that confidence factor again.
An awareness of the time you spend, how you spend it, and measured against the sort of the money you're making in various activities, absolutely essential. I think that was one thing that it was a thing that when I worked in a PR consultancy, I loathed doing, was keeping the logs of the time spent and for billing purposes. But it was the thing I actually found singly most valuable when I set up my own business, was to understand where my time was going, because then that helps you understand where your money is going. And I'd say that cash flow, if you've got time, you've got money, but then you've got cash flow. A large number of businesses go out of business during an upswing in their fortunes, because they have maybe they've been toddling along at a certain level, and then things start going well. They bring in suppliers, and then they start have to pay those suppliers. They might not get paid for a while. So you should always keep a really tight grip on your cash flow, and just in a very rudimentary level, make sure you've got enough for the next 3 months. So just to make sure that if things go pear-shaped, or that business that keeps telling you they're going to pay you tomorrow, is actually telling porky pies, then actually you've actually got a little nest egg. That's difficult in the early days, but to do that. But when you get to that cushion point, then keep the cushion, because as Dean rightly says, the taxman will come calling, and you've got to be ready for that. So.
I think the other side of that as well is to get a good grip on what the payment terms are of people you're doing business with, because they may have different payment terms. Some people I work with, it will be very much you get paid at the end of the following month that you invoice, but some have got extended payment terms, and so therefore knowing that what's coming in when isn't always directly linked to when you've invoiced. Therefore, knowing what the payment terms are of the people you're working with is quite handy as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for those practical tips. We mentioned this earlier. What are the benefits? Why are you still self-employed? And I'll start with you, Trevor. You mentioned 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was joking about freedom and responsibility. I mean, let's talk. If we focus on the freedom, that is it. Is that I just got a massive kick, and I still do every day when I get up. And actually, I think I'm the master of my own fortune here. I actually, if I have a bad day, it's not anybody else's fault, really. I mean, there might be an annoying client or something like that, but I mean, but largely speaking, it's yours to shape, and that gives me a tremendous. And I kind of realised that what it was I didn't like about a large number of, particularly larger organisations, where you do really feel like that sort of round peg in the square hole. You don't feel you quite fit in the organisation, or you're being made to fit into a sort of role in an organisation. And when you can design it for yourself, and sort of, as long as you're following certain principles about what's your purpose in what you're doing, so you awaken that feeling of, what is it I love that makes me feel alive about what I do. Yes, you've got to make money out of it, but also you can do it in a way that's aligned with your values. Also, why am I still doing this? Well, board meetings are very short because it's just me, and I decisions are very quick. And you can and using what Dean was saying about being able to having to change at certain points. But being able to change is like really important. You are not in an oil tanker, you're in a speedboat, and you can just change directions sort of quite quickly. And that's what I love about it. If I decide that actually the future's over here today, then I can go that way.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Yeah, I think personally, I think there are a lot of benefits, but I think that doing something you love, as you mentioned earlier, is one of the key things. And I think you can really focus on that. Dean, briefly.
Probably that got the orangutan before I'd even started speaking then, didn't I? Very, very similar to Trevor, really. I love the variety of what I do. Whether I'm facilitating a workshop, whether I'm coaching somebody, or doing more of a presentation or a talk with people. I think the variety is the key, rather than feeling like I'm doing the same thing over and over again, or repeating the same thing over and over again. So I like the variety, but the work-life balance, I think probably all of us strive to find a better or more acceptable work-life balance. And I feel like I've worked hard, but then I also feel like I deserve to enjoy the time when I'm not working. And I think one of the other pieces of advice I'd give to people is don't feel guilty for not working. If you want to take the dogs out for a walk, or go to the gym, or finish earlier one day because you want to go to the shops, you suddenly haven't got somebody tracking your movements or looking. You are responsible to yourself. So I think taking responsibility for that is really key. And ultimately, I found that I was able to do more of what I enjoy doing, using my strengths much more, instead of doing things I had to do.
And Dean, that's something that I took ages to learn. That's a really important point, because the freedom side of things, you actually got freedom to work 18 hours a day if you want to. And because I felt this responsibility, I did. I was working stupid amount of hours, and I had to sort of be nice to myself, and persuade myself that it was okay to go and play golf, if there wasn't much happening, and it was okay to go and walk the dog, or take a break at a slightly unusual work hour, for a time when most other people are working. That actually it's fine, because if you've got that gift of freedom, if you like, then manage it. And I was actually finding that I had to teach myself that many times, before I actually finally clicked.
I think as a result, I genuinely feel I'm a better version of myself.
Yeah.
And actually, I think probably what really drove it home was when my wife said to me, "It's like I've got my husband back." And that really hit home, but in a positive way. So I think it's about trying to be that best version of yourself.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for keeping it brief. We've got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to go on to the last point that we always leave with, which is top tips. So what do we want to share? I'm just going to jump in there, because when I've been talking to people about self-employment, there's a great book that I recommend, which is a book called by a guy called Mike Lewis, called Jump. Which talks about, if the job you want is not the career you want, then jump. Dean's obviously looking for it on the shelf.
No, I was going to supplement that with another book, because I spoke to this gentleman who wrote this book, so I feel like, and he gave me some great advice, and I feel like giving him a bit of a plug seems opportunistic. But it's David Mellor, who's got an association to 1080. And it's called From Crew to Captain, and it's a really good take on going from being part of the crew to being the captain of your own boat. So if David's watching, I've successfully given you a plug for your book series, not just one book, a book series, but they are really, really good, really, really useful.
I liked the Mike Lewis book, and what he said in that was, have a plan. Have some self-belief, which I think we kind of all need, and have a contingency. So what if all goes wrong? What would you do? And very simple stuff, but very powerful. So top tips. Apart from plugging David's book, Dean, what else would you like to leave us with?
I think I've got to go back to that absolute clarity piece that I said earlier. Absolute clarity over being clear with yourself and with others of what you will, what you won't do. I think weigh up all the pros and cons of working for yourself. Don't just focus on all the shiny bits. Make an informed decision, making sure that it's the right time for you. Having a mentor, really, really important. And Trevor said about being kind to yourself, and I've got that written down. Be kind to yourself. Also stay true to yourself. Believe in yourself. And if I'm going to use the boat analogy, be prepared that you might capsize once in a while. But when you do, it's about getting the boat back up and going again.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Trevor, your top tip.
My top tip, there could be hundreds, but I'm going to just stick with one, is that a lot of people start about thinking in terms of their business, like, what do I want to have? Well, like I want to make $1 million or something like that. I would say, think about who you want to be. Okay, what sort of person you want to be, what sort of values and behaviors you're going to run this business on. To do what you then do kind of emerges from that, and then what you want to have can emerge from that. So be, do, have, not have, and then wonder why you can't have it because you're not being the person you want to be in the first place. So I would say be, do, have in that order is probably my best tip that I could give in the last 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. We've actually gone over time slightly, but I'm sure that's okay. Well, thank you guys for that. That half an hour has gone very quickly, as it always does, and some great information there for people to listen to on the catch up on the podcasts. Just want to put it up. The next session is on the 10th of July, which is around managing multiple job offers. Hopefully, a lot of us are experiencing choice in the market. This might be the session for you. So brilliant. Just a comment there that's come up saying, a useful and timely session for me. Thank you. This is from a listener who is listening. So that's great. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your time. And I'll see you again next time. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.